Hi, welcome to Inside the Lines. I'm Lizzie Arbogast alongside Scott Hardy, and we are back for week 4 of the football season. And like 3 minutes ago, we came up with our catchphrase for the week, adapt and overcome, and we think that's going to be our motto for our game of the week, which is Opelika at Benjamin Russell. He can't get enough of this game.
Yes, the first game that you talked about when you got here was Reeltown Dave. When I said, I understand that that's a big game, but for me, the biggest
Don't insult those Dadeville fans.
No, I'm sorry, no insulting them. But for me, the biggest game of the year that I'll always attend or be able to cover will be Benjamin Russell Opelika. And really, if you look at the record, at least since 2000, you really wouldn't think that there would be much to cover in the game because Opelika is pretty much dominated, as the Wildcats have only won twice since 2000. But there's something about the similarities in both communities of Opelika and Alexander City. So it's always a good time when the Bulldogs come to town.
Well, and I feel like kind of Danny Horn alluded to that, I asked him, I heard this is your big rivalry game, and he sort of said, it's hard to say they're a rival when you haven't beaten them much lately, but I think this game will set the tone for what's going to happen for the rest of the region. I know Opelika going into the season was one of the favorites to win this region. Benjamin Russell off to a killer start right now. If they can have a good showing against Opelika, I think that maybe people would be that much more confident in what they can do this year.
I think the winner of this game, I think, is obviously in the driver's seat for the number one seed in the region as we get ready to really get in the thick of things with the meat of the schedule coming down the line with your region games. But Wetumpka, Benjamin Russell, and Opelika, the top 3 teams in the region. But Benjamin Russell off to a 2-0 start, beating Chelsea and Pelham. So there's an opportunity here. If they're able to beat the Bulldogs, they'll be, as I said, in the driver's seat going forward, and they have a legitimate opportunity to be the number one seed.
For sure. You said there were some injuries maybe going on with Opelika?
Yeah, I do know that a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, Blackman, the quarterback for the Bulldogs, he was injured, and it sounds like their starting running back as well as starting wide receiver are out for this game as well. So that obviously bodes well for the Wildcats because looking at what Opelika has done, if you look at their scoring, they haven't really scored a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
Low 20s against Auburn, only 17 points against Carver.
Right.
So there's an opportunity for the Wildcats to stay competitive in this game if they're able to play the style of football that we've seen the last couple of weeks.
That seems to be one thing that Benjamin Russell has done well this year is actually avoiding injuries around our area, especially right, knock on wood. There have been some pretty severe injuries that we'll get to a little later that have been really key injuries, especially. It seems like Benjamin Russell, at least for now, has done a good job keeping everybody healthy, which is always important.
Yeah, and that's really something that Coach Horn talked about in terms from a depth perspective. They don't really have the most depth, so there's some key positions that if there were an injury to take place, it would be detrimental to the team, and it's obviously going to be detrimental anytime you have injuries. But the Wildcats will find a way to stay healthy, fortunately, and so if that's able to continue, and there's a lot of that's really out of your control, but if that's able to continue and they're at full strength, they'll be able to compete with most teams in the area.
And that's going to take us right into our next game. Reeltown is hosting Lynette. Yeah, they're hosting Lynette. And they did have a detrimental injury. They found out that Kiki Hughley, who was projected to be their best running back, he's the fastest guy on the team, tore his ACL last week against Horseshoe Bend, will be out for the rest of the season. The one good thing I would say is after last week's performance, you had 2 running backs without Kiki that both went over 100 yards. So they have to feel good about that.
Yeah, if it was his twin brother. Is that who?
His twin brother, yeah. Trey Hughley had like 181 yards or something like that.
Yeah, and that's really for as long as I've been around football, at least I've been able to understand that Reeltown has always had a great running game, going back to the Jack O'Neal days, and obviously with Coach Matt Johnson being a byproduct of that, he's going to try to implement that. So the running game, I think they had over 350 yards or something in that realm in terms of rushing the ball. So that'll be very key in the matchup against Lynette. But for 2 teams who have been able to score the ball kind of for 2 teams that have great defenses, rather, I think there'll be an opportunity for these 2 teams to see some high-scoring. You'll see a high-scoring matchup between these 2. I think that the player that I keep saying each week that I think that we'll have to have a big game, and I'm just going to stick with them with the Rebels, Logan Hunt, and I think that they'll have to pass the ball a little bit more in this game, I think, to keep up with the scoring that Lynette will be able to do.
And one thing that I talked to Coach Johnson about, which was also a key for them against Horseshoe Bend and Trace Meadows, he wants to have some of those long, sustained drives keeping Lynette's offense off the field is the best way to make sure they don't score any points, right? So I think he was encouraged by the fact that they had some 6 and 7 minute drives last week. Just moving the chains, controlling the time of possession, and that kind of thing will be a good strategy, I think, against Lynette.
Yeah, and again, Lynette coming off of kind of Drake-type performances, going back-to-back with 50-point games there in the last 2 opponents. So the Reeltown Rebels will have to, as you said, keep them off the field. And if they can limit the big plays, I think Reeltown legitimately has a good chance of winning this football game. It's going to be a lot closer than what I think people will anticipate. But the Rebels they actually own the series lead 5-4, but the Lynette Panthers?
Panthers?
Panthers.
I think.
Panthers. I apologize about that, Panthers, but they dominated the game last year, winning 41-0. So I'm sure that Coach Matt Johnson, being a former player, wants to get this win under his belt. So this will be a good matchup, and they're hosting, so that'll be an added advantage as well.
For sure. Speaking of big plays, looking at Dadeville, those last 2 weeks, the big play has been the killer for them. Luckily, they're going up finally against a team that they should be able to beat. They're 0-2 in the region, hosting Hopeville. They've been on the road 3 weeks in a row. They're finally back at home. It's their homecoming game. I talked to Coach White this week, and, you hate to call it a must-win game in week 4, but you don't want to be 0-3 in the region to start.
Yeah, and, you don't want to get all hyperbolic, but it is. I think it is a must-win game. But they're coming off – they played 2 of probably the tougher teams they're going to play within the region anyway, coming off from Munford and then Lynette. So they played their 2 toughest opponents, and then Leeds and Munford. So
that's my fault.
Yeah, that is
Leeds
your fault.
and Lynette are
that's an inside thing. Yes, so
in my world.
Yes, but I don't know. I feel comfortable with this opportunity for David to get back on the right track, and Tony Franklin, former coach at Horseshoe Bend, coming in. So he's struggling a little bit with Hopeful. Hopeful hasn't won a game. So if they're 0-3, so they've lost their last 13 games, I know for sure, because they went 0-10 last year. So they should be able to get back on the right track against this Cowboy team. And no knock on Hopeful, but we really should anticipate them getting back on the winning side of things this week.
For sure. I'd also expect Horseshoe Bend, which is at Ranburn. They're coming off what I know was a really tough loss for them. They're also in the 0-2 in the region position now. Again, they played 2 very tough teams now I'm going to say the wrong one. Lynette and Reeltown, they played to start the region, and now they have a game where they really need to get a win, and I certainly think they can do it against Ranburn. Yeah,
Ranburn is 2-1 on the year, but Woodland, a team that Reeltown kind of took it to them, and so seeing how closely Reeltown and the Horseshoe Bend game was, you would anticipate that the Generals would be able to get back on the winning side of things as well. They defeated them 45-28 last year, so there's some comfortableness there in this game, and so I think that, again, this will be a game where Trace Meadows probably goes nuts, and he puts up fantasy-type numbers, and so I would think that he would be the key to a successful night for the Generals.
I did talk, however, quite a bit to Coach Avert about finding somebody that's going to complement Trace, because at some point when he's one of your only weapons, your biggest weapon, your most obvious weapon, teams, i.e. Reeltown, are going to key in on him. They know he's the one that needs to be stopped. So if they can get Joe Reilly back from injury, I think that will help kind of balance out their offense a little bit more.
Yeah, and if they are able to get Cade Worthy going through the air a little bit more, that takes some pressure off the running game as well, because, again, when you're stacking the box like that, they're going to be one-on-one opportunities and some big play chances for the Generals. So I think, and that's something Coach Avery said too, you want to really get the passing game going a little bit more. So we should see some of that this week, especially against a team that they should be able to handle pretty handily. For
sure. Lastly, we have Central Coosa at Beulah. My heart just goes out for the Cougars, because I know that they're trying so hard. I talked to Coach Rary today, and it was 0-0 at halftime last week, and then it's 40-0 at the end. And he said it went from we're in this game, we could win this game, to we want this game to be over very quickly. It just was like one bad thing happened and all the heads dropped. And with roster numbers like that and how they're winless right now, they just got to find a way to keep improving.
Yeah, and I felt really good about this game, especially coming off the bye week, and really a chance for him to get with his players and kind of just calm down a little bit. Everything's been so fast, so they needed a way to slow some things down. But with that in mind, the depth is the issue, and
sure.
that's something that a lot of teams aren't having to deal with. None of the teams they're going to play are going to have that limited amount of players. So no matter how athletic you are, at some point you're going to get winded when you're having to play 70, 80 plays a game.
For sure.
But again, this will be a game where they should be very competitive, but Beulah, again, will probably have the numbers match up, so that kind of bodes well for them. But I'm with you. Coach Ware's doing an outstanding job, though, and just being able to keep the composure of the team itself. So I'm with you. Shout out to the Cougars, and hopefully they'll be able to get a win in the win column here soon.
And I was encouraged because he told me that they've added a couple people in the last. He said they've added about 4 people in the last week and a half. So, hopefully those kind of. He said there's young guys. I mean, 8th graders and freshmen, but they're athletes, and so maybe they can kind of help out a little bit. We do actually have one more game, Lyman Ward at Hope Christian. I don't know. I forgot about the Fighting Rangers because they were awesome to watch last week. That was a fun game for sure.
I'm going to make a confession, and I did not know that the game had taken place on a Thursday, that the game had already taken place. So I was out of town for our Inside the Lines live program last Friday, so Lizzie asked for my picks. Well, I gave her what my prediction was for the Lyman Ward matchup, and
it was a complete opposite of
It
what happened.
was not what happened at all, so I apologize to the Fighting Rangers. So I will not go against you this week. I will be picking Lyman Ward. I don't know if that's who I picked in the paper or not. So now, see, this is what happens. I forget what happens there. But having said that, I do want to get your thoughts real quick, though, with the 8-man football. I didn't get a chance to speak to you on that. What are your thoughts on that?
It was really cool. It was interesting to see our athlete of the week, Jerry Bosworth. He had 6 touchdowns in the game, which is incredible. But he said something about it's harder to play defense at 8-man, but maybe easier to play offense, which is something I saw in a 54-42 game, I think it was last week. But it was interesting, and Lyman Ward was fun. I liked the cannon that went off in every touchdown. So
yeah, I will be sticking with Lyman Ward, but I'm with that. And you're right, in that larger space with that amount of players, your skill position players are going to really be highlighted in that. So
for sure.
I anticipate that happening again this week.
For sure. All right, we're going to go ahead and discuss our Dark Horse Player of the Week, sponsored by Dark Insurance Agency. I'm going to start off this week, and I'm going to go with Benjamin Russell's Zay Stows. We've talked so much about Hezekiah Hunter, David Heron, and same with Trace Meadows that I mentioned earlier. Teams are going to start keying in on those 2 guys. Zay had a little bit of kind of a breakout game a couple weeks ago. If they can get past the ball a little bit more. Landon Cotney had a good game last week, so I would look for him to maybe make some of those bigger plays that will hopefully propel them to a win against Opelika.
Yeah, and there was no way I was not picking a Benjamin
I let him be
Wildcat.
a homer this week.
First time I get to pick a Wildcat, and I'm going to stick with the same side of the ball at the same position, but I'm going to go with Nicholas McGee. Nick got it on the board for the first time last week in a win against Chelsea. So I think that the emergence of the passing game is really starting to happen now. 3 games in, the Wildcats have an opportunity now to really start getting honed in offensively. So I look for Nick to have a big game on Friday.
Awesome. Well, we are excited about tomorrow. We will be live as always. We're going to be at Benjamin Russell. We've got some fun stuff planned, so make sure to tune in from 6 to 6:30. As always, we want to thank our sponsors, Radney and Langley Funeral Homes, as well as Alex City Marine and Dark Insurance Agency. And we will see you guys Friday night.